Welcome to Impact. I'm Philip Morris from Proctor's and the interviewer for the art segment. Today our guest is Curtis Funk, the artistic director and conductor of the Octavo Singers here in Schenectady. Curtis, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, delighted to have you. You've been here a couple of years with Octavo, right?
Yep, just finished my second season with them. So.
And you've been a musician your whole life. How did you get to this thing?
I've kind of dabbled in music when I was younger. I took the requisite piano lessons and that type of thing. And then by the time I was in my senior year of high school, I decided I wanted to pursue this a little more seriously. So I went to Michigan State, and I was a piano major. I studied with Ralph Vodopek, just an amazing pianist. He won the first Van Cliburn competition. And as I was working with the piano, I noticed that I really wasn't cut out to sit in a practice room for 6 hours a day and work on the same difficult passage. I was too ADD for that. And then all of a sudden I just discovered that I really enjoyed conducting. And I found myself getting involved with church choirs predominantly. Ultimately, I got a job in Mineola, which is in Nassau County, as the high school orchestra teacher. And then
it's so funny to think of conducting as an outlet for ADD, but it makes tons of sense, really.
Absolutely, you've got all this activity.
You're always moving, there's always something going on.
You've got to harness it for good instead of evil, and it really is the only thing is you have to stand still on a podium for 3 hours, so there's a little bit.
And you could probably change that. That's just practice, right?
I tend to be rather Bernstein-esque when I conduct, so I can actually get some of that outlet going. But in terms of Octavo specifically, unfortunately, my colleague George Morose passed away, and I called the board of Octavos and I said, do you want some help, just interim or whatever? And they said, well, we have a library series coming up, so I worked up the Vivaldi Gloria and the PDQ Bach, the seasonings, and we put that on, and they decided that they would kind of treat that as my audition. And ultimately, I was hired, and it's just such a wonderful group. It really is. We're up to about 100 singers now, so it's a really dynamic group. Lots of sopranos and altos, like any other volunteer choir. A little short on tenors.
It's not just volunteer choirs, right? Even the paid ones are short on tenors.
I know. Like, find me a tenor. But they put out a really good sound. They we do mostly the long. Sacred pieces, and we do it in the large urban churches, so we get these beautiful backgrounds.
So Detroit is such a powerful symbol in America at this point as a potential for renewal. It's disastrous decline, and you lived in Detroit. You were born and raised in Detroit. Can you talk about Detroit?
Yeah, when I was in Detroit, it was in the 70s, and it was starting to decline, but it was still, it was still a bit of not a cultural mecca, but I mean there was activity going on until Dorati had the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. There was the Michigan Opera Company. I mean, it was there was an opportunity to be entertained if you lived in Detroit. Right around the 80s, when the auto industry started to close its doors, and quite honestly, when I left, but my exodus had no bearing on that. The cultural scene started to decline there. It's on its way back. I still have family out there, and we still keep in touch. And there is theater, there is some sort of orchestral presence going on, and I think it's going to be okay, but you're absolutely right. They say, so goes the nation. Detroit goes there first, and it just seems to be a city that just got walloped.
Well, what's interesting to me as I think about it, and I even think about it in the context of what you do now, is that there's a redefining of the creative economy. Young people are moving to Detroit and doing amazing, weird things, from food to exhibitry to making and inventing, and they're doing it in these bunches of pockets together. And I mean, you have a sense of fertile energy, you know what I mean? It's different than what old Detroit was.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, and you know,
but vital.
and they're thinking outside the box. You know, for one thing, they just brought in a financial manager, so he's taken a look at it, and so hopefully there'll be some numbers, logic coming up soon. But a while ago, they saw all these abandoned properties and all these foreclosed homes, and they started building gardens. And you know, it's a right downtown Detroit. You know, you've got these victory gardens, and now some of it, quite honestly, it was just out of necessity. People were hungry and they didn't have work, and you know, they were actually, you know, growing their own food. But some of it was just, you know, we've got really ugly space. You know, let's do something with it. So you're absolutely right. The other thing, and not just Detroit, but other cities, is people are starting to figure out that, you know, when you spend $1 in the arts, there's a trickle down that's just amazing. The Port Authority did a study a few years ago and discerned that for every dollar that got spent on the arts in New York City, there was $7 of trickle-down money. You know, people, they went out to eat
Do
before the
other
show,
things,
they
right.
took a hotel room, they took a cab, you know, maybe they bought some merchandise after the gig, you know, that type of thing. So I think people are starting to be aware of the fact that the arts just, you know, we're not a drain. You know, we can actually be you know, contribute to the boon.
Yeah. And I just wonder in our community in the capital region what opportunities we have to learn from a place like Detroit. You know, like, you know, we have our ways of being, these four cities and this culture of the capital region, but I wonder if there are new ways of being that would be, if we pretended we were inventing a new fertile thing, how would we do it? I mean, I don't know how Octavo might reinvent, but it could be interesting to.
Oh, absolutely. I think one thing people are starting to look at that hasn't always been there is collaboration, and I think that's going to be an opportunity for something different to happen. I'm looking to take my Octavos and combine it with other groups, and not even just musical groups. You know, I'm thinking of maybe working with like Alexina Jones, and maybe coming up with some sort of thing where there's singing and acting going on, or you know, maybe a dance group, that type of thing. There is a composer named Jean Berger. He was around in the latter half of the last century, and he and I had a chance to meet, and he was fascinating. And he said, you know, the day of going to a concert and just sitting there with the program in your lap and watching people either play their instruments or sing, he says that's going to go away. He says there's got, with all the multimedia stimulation that's going on, performing groups are going to have to collaborate and give people something besides just something to listen to. There's going to be something to see, maybe something to feel. And I think that's where a lot of artistic directors are headed.
Yeah. Actually, I had a conversation today I want to share with you with Mac Suddeth from the MySci. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a year-long exhibit. It's going to get installed in July around motion, from atomic motion to the moving of the planets to any kind of motion. And all I could think of was, wow, that might be a cool opportunity for music or dance to tie to an exhibit opening or something, and invent something different, because the notion of motion we all understand in our business of the arts, and mm-hmm. He's going to be looking at it scientifically while someone interprets it. I don't know, might be a chance to do an out-of-the-box thing with Octavos.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, you know, motion just lends itself to music. To me, there's two types of music. There's song and there's dance. And the dance aspect of music absolutely just lends itself to motion. There's so much cool literature out there that you could tie in to
Eurythmics and that whole stuff from the 70s. Yeah.
And the bottom line is, once the motion stops, then you could actually go over to the song part of the music media, and you know, because actually, you know, no motion is a type of motion in itself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Cool. So, what are you imagining for the next couple of years for Octavos?
Let's see. Coming up in the fall is kind of exciting. Speaking of collaboration, we're going to collaborate with the Schenectady Symphony Orchestra, and we're going to play at your house. We're going to do the Mendelssohn Hymn of Praise, and we're doing this piece by Wenzel Müller. It's a mass, and it's erroneously referred to as Mozart's 12th Mass. Mozart had nothing to do with it, but Müller's publicist knew that if he put Mozart's name on it, maybe he'd sell a few copies. So we're going to do those two pieces. and,
Spelled it with 2 Z's.
exactly right. So I'm real excited to work with Chuck Schneider. He's a terrific guy, and it'll be fun to have the group together as a full symphony orchestra. So that's one new thing. And then they'd fire me if I didn't do my traditional Messiah. So we've got the Messiah coming up in December. And then in the spring, we're doing something really cool. There's a composer out there named Carl Jenkins. He's not terribly well known, but he's got a Stabat Mater that is just so incredibly beautiful, and it involves the standard 10-line Stabat Mater poem, but he also weaves in a bunch of other kind of tearful, sorrowful kind of pieces, and he's got this authentic traditional percussion line that's playing underneath it. He brings in a contralto who does the Eastern quarter tone bending music kind of thing, and at one point she's actually singing in Aramaic, and it's just a really, really fun piece. The Octavas hasn't departed too much from the standard sacred literature, so this will be new for them, and so I'm as excited for the ensemble as I am for the audience.
Well, that's great. That's really cool. Well, Curtis, thank you. You do a great job.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that.
This is Curtis Funk, who's our guest today. He's the conductor and artistic director of Octavo Singers. I'm Philip Morris. Thank you for joining us at Impact. Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.